And now it's time for Guerilla Roundup. They'll let you know what happened overnight when things transpire you whilst you sleep. Right there in the loop you keep.
Welcome to the Guerilla Roundup for day 2 of the final test from the Oval. I'm joined today by our superior, our master, our great leader, Hendo. Welcome.
Thanks, Messi. Delighted to be here, although I am, of course, putting my escallop on the into the oven and having to wait for that for later.
Oh dear, I'm sorry about that, but we all appreciate it. I'll very quickly run through the scorecard for today. Australia started the day at 61 for 1. They lost. Usman Khawaja was out for 47. Labuschagne for 9 from 82 deliveries, I should add. Stephen Smith for 71. Travis Head for 4. Mitchell Marsh for 16. Alex Carey for 10. Mitchell Stark for 7. Pat Cummins 36, Todd Murphy 34, and Josh Hazelwood was 6 not out. There were 31 extras, including 17 buys. Only one no ball, which is good. So Australia were eventually all out right at the end of the day for 295. The bowlers, Stuart Broad took 2 for 49. Jimmy Anderson 1 for 67. Mark Wood 2 for 62. Chris Wokes 3 for 61, and Joe Root 2 for 20. Harry Brook bowled 3 overs for 7 runs, and the less said about that, the better. Hendo, how did you enjoy today's play?
Well, it was a game. It was a day of momentum shifts, really, wasn't it? People will argue that Australia were far too cautious in that opening session, but I could see the sense behind it. I think they just overdid it a little bit. I think the idea was that Usman Khawaja and Marnus Labuschagne would lay a foundation for the likes of Smith and especially Travis Head and Mitchell Marsh, who were, quick scorers, to come in and having laid that foundation, hopefully build on that and get a lead over England that would hopefully mean that they only had to bat once in this Test match. It didn't really work out that way. I think they gave England hope in a sense. They didn't quite get at them. And I mean, it's extraordinary. Marnus Labuschagne's coming off 100 at Old Trafford and batting, 82 balls, nearly 2 hours for 9. I mean, that's taking things to extreme. And I think he was, when he was finally out, brilliant catch by Root off Wood. I think he was more annoyed with himself in going out. He was having words with the umpire and saying it's too dark out here. And it was quite gloomy. But I sensed that was a kind of disappointment and annoyance with himself rather than with the umpiring decision.
Absolutely. I've got to say that, even as an Australian, I was relieved to see him go. I was so fed up with him.
It was an ugly innings, wasn't it? It really was an ugly innings. And you'd think he'd have got a little bit more confidence. I suppose they were trying to squeeze England, but it kind of backfired on them a little bit. And then those who are, the noisiest advocates for Bazball were kind of given a boost by what happened after that, because having not got those runs on the board, England swept through them in that afternoon session and took 5 wickets, and suddenly it looked as if England were going to get a lead of 100 or something like that.
Yes, well, I mean, you lost. Labuschagne, as you say, fell to a really good catch at slip by Root, but Head, Marsh, and Carey, who was sort of the heart of the middle order, only made 30 runs between them, and really didn't bat at all convincingly. Got themselves out and left England with the door wide open. What happened in the tail was interesting, though. Maybe you could talk a bit about Smith's innings too and how he got out.
Well, Smith, I mean, that's going to be the other point of controversy, isn't it, from this series? The run out that wasn't Steve Smith coming back for a second run. I think it was George Elam, the substitute fielder, who got the ball in on the bounce to Johnny Bairstow, and it looked like he caught him despite the dive a couple of inches short. And then we had controversy over whether Bairstow had just knocked the bail off a little bit early. thus kind of nullifying what he did beyond that. And the third umpire came back and said, well, I can't give that out. And it seemingly took Sky an hour to look at it with all sorts of angles before they came back and thought, and said basically, well, we think that probably was out. And that could have a massive impact on this game, because Steve Smith went on, in his merry way, picking up 71, and he got really good support from Pat Cummins again. And Todd Murphy was a revelation, really. Batted excellently, although, of course, England did, at that point, feed his hook shot. I mean, I suppose you think of a number 10, you don't think he's going to come in. He might get you a lucky top edge 6, but you don't expect him to hit you 3 times over long leg. But he did, and he looked every inch the batsman. And we were talking in the green room that, and maybe actually on air, that Todd Murphy, if he gets an extended run the side, if Nathan Lyon's career sort of winds down, he looks like the kind of player who will go up the order. And might even be, a genuine all-rounder.
Well, he
but he's
hit 3 sixes and 2 4s.
Yeah.
And I did think there was some daft bowling from England to him, feeding his hook. And he just helped the ball over the boundary, a long way over in a couple of cases, for 6.
Well, he was hitting the shorter boundary. And as you say, that although Wood in particular was bowling short, he wasn't directing those bounces particularly well. So it really wasn't a full shot. He just had to help it on its way, really. That said, you've still got to hit, a 90-mile-an-hour bowler over the boundary. It's still a shot. When Australia were 185 for 7 when Mitchell Stark went, England looked like they would get a lead of 80, something like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, a really weird thing happened. I mean, because Mitchell Stark and Stephen Smith put on 54, and Stephen Smith was batting really well. He was on 69. All of a sudden, it was like the silly pills cut in or cut out, whatever. He went several steps down the wicket to try and hit Broad. I think it was Broad over his head. Wokes, sorry, yes. Yeah. And it plugged a deep mid off. Fortunately for him, there was nobody there. And we thought, well, that was a moment of madness. 2 balls later, he goes to try and whack it over a square leg, gets a top edge, and it goes 40 metres up in the air and gets caught by Bairstow. It was as if he's just suddenly gone crazy at a time when there was no need for it at all.
Yeah, I mean, those two were batting well. It's interesting. You said I didn't even sort of twig that the partnership between Stark and Stark. No, Mitchell Stark was out on 185.
Sorry, Cummins and Smith.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I was going to say I hadn't twigged that Mitchell Stark's partnership with Smith had been worth that amount, but obviously it hadn't. I don't know. Sometimes I guess he just thought, get as near to the England total as possible. I don't know whether that moment of the run out was played on his mind at all. It didn't look like it was. It doesn't look like the kind of thing that would play on Stephen Smith's mind. So yeah, it's a strange one. I mean, I think also you've got to say a very good catch from Bairstow. Okay, he's got the gloves on.
Yep.
He obviously had to go for it, but he's catching it over his shoulder. It's gone quite high. It's probably spinning quite viciously. And he took it with the minimum of fuss. And can you imagine if Johnny Bairstow had spilled that? I mean, well, there'd be no way back for it, really, would there? As far as some people are concerned. Yeah, I mean, it was a funny day. Broad had a really good spell after lunch when he got rid of Usman Khawaja and Travis Head.
Yep.
Mitchell Marsh came in, played a few more attacking shots. A lovely straight 6 off, I think it was Broad.
Yeah.
But then a really lame shot to give Anderson his 1 wicket.
Yep.
And you got the feeling with Anderson. I mean, obviously it's a shame for all of us that he seems to be sort of limping off the scene with a bit of a whimper rather than with in a brash, arrogant, and happy way. But you got the feeling that Stokes was constantly looking to get Jimmy Anderson back involved, thinking surely this is going to be the spell where it all comes good for him. Yeah. And it did for a moment. He got that wicket, and I think in his first over back. But then he couldn't continue and finishes up with okay figures of 1 for 67, 26 overs. His economy rate was good, as it normally is these days. But he's just lacked a little bit of zip, hasn't he? There's just not been.
I mean, I thought the English bowling on the whole was pretty good. That daft bit at the end with the bounces to Murphy, but overall the line was pretty good. I think Australia helped them a certain amount, but at the end of the day, I'm really angry with Australia in terms of them blowing an opportunity, because there was some nip on the wicket this morning, but you know that Labuschagne thing just froze everything. So they added about 54 runs in the morning session at a time when if they'd just added 80 then it would have put them that much further ahead of the game. So
Yeah, I think they ended up adding 54 in that morning session, which actually seemed better than it would be at one point. I mean, because they were so pedestrian for such a long time.
yeah,
I mean, I can understand you're annoyed from an Australian perspective. England will be a little bit annoyed from being 190 odd for 4 yesterday and being out for 283. It's been momentum shift, and maybe we're not only seeing the strengths of both sides in different ways, but we're also seeing the flaws in both teams' approaches to the
yes,
game.
yeah, I think that's a
Seeing
very
everything anyway.
yeah, it's a very good observation, I think. Um, and not for the first time this series. In fact, pretty much every day, other than in the fourth test, we've ended an evening saying, well, this match is in the balance. Anybody could win. You've got to say the same from here. How do you see this going tomorrow, given that the weather looks set fair for tomorrow generally, and the pitch seems to be playing at its easiest so far? What do you see England looking to do tomorrow?
Well, obviously, I mean, I say obviously they're going to try and score quickly. They're going to try and impose themselves on Australia, but there's so much time left in the match. I mean, you don't want to see them get drawn into the kind of caution that Australia showed this morning. You do feel like from time to time they might need to be reminded that this is potentially a 5-day game. I can't actually see it going to a fifth day from here. England's batting at one moment it's brilliant, at the next moment it's difficult to watch. It's daft, and you're not quite sure what you're going to get at any point. And even looking back to the first day yesterday, England got off to that really excellent start, 60 odd I think for the first wicket, and then suddenly they're 70 for 3. So you just don't know what's going to happen. I mean, I think Australia have probably bowled a bit better on this pitch than England did. That said, Australia have only got a 12-run lead, and at 185 for 7, England were in the box seat, and they thought they were going to have a bit of a lead with which to then take the game to Australia. But even with just that little deficit of 12 runs, you just feel that it makes you a little bit. Well, maybe it makes not everybody nervous. It makes me a little bit nervous.
It doesn't take a lot to make you nervous. It's well known.
No, it's true. You can't relax with this England side, and maybe that's a good thing. You don't quite know what you're going to get. I mean, I'm supposed to have a day off tomorrow, but I'm kind of feeling energized to come in because it's just going to be such a monumental day. And you don't know. England, they could falter, they could fall away. It could even be over tomorrow if England do anything totally ridiculous. But you hope not. You hope it's going to be another of those games that goes down to the wire, and certainly goes to Sunday evening. And what will England think? I mean, if they do lose this 3-1, it's not going to look that great. I mean, whatever you say about Bazball and the way they're trying to recreate Test cricket, losing an Ashes is probably the thing that hurts most for an England side or an England supporter. And and I think Australia are motivated by wanting to throw back these suggestions that England have had a moral victory. I think what Australia done, I said I think in the green room, I think what Australia have done is they've played the really important passages better than England have. Generally speaking, I mean, again, Pat Cummins at Edgbaston, Pat Cummins again tonight. Whatever flaws you may think that Pat Cummins has in his character, I don't think he has that many flaws. If Australia win this 3-1, are they going to really look back and say, well, Pat Cummins was too defensive? Because they've kind of nullified Bazball, haven't they? And that was the project. So, I don't think we're going to be looking in 15, 20 years and say, remember how Pat Cummins put a deep backward point from the first over to look at and say, well, they nullified Bazball. Do you remember that period of Bazball? Which of course will have faded into history by then.
Well, I've already picked my Australian player of the series. Is clearly Cummins, no matter what happens from here. I just think he's been an amazing bowler. And I think I heard you mention yesterday, even though he only took 1 wicket, he bowled superbly in his opening spell, particularly.
He did. And I mean, we weren't the only people to say that. I mean, I was listening to the competition on the way home in the car last night, and various other people were talking about he could have had 4 or 5 wickets yesterday. But you can't really tell where this game is going to go. There's just so many shifts in momentum that just when you think one team's got on top, the other team comes back. So it's just a fascinating game to end a fascinating series, really.
Well, indeed, and I think we're all the better for that. So we'll wrap that up there. Just a couple of things. Our tweeter of the day, in fact, our YouTuber of the day today has to be Frank Rockefeller, who made a very generous contribution of $50 US on the super chat, which is quite enough to buy my affection anyhow. And our gorilla of the day has to be Jim Birchall, who's, I think it's his debut in the studio, isn't it not? Came all the way from New Zealand to be with us today.
No, I think he's been in the studio before. I think he has from time to time. But actually, I was having a very interesting discussion with Jim. He's got a sideline in podcasts about about weird happenings, unexplained happenings, and he's off to Bury St Edmunds to make a little film about time slipping, which sounds quite interesting. Where people
I'm sorry to interrupt you. The podcast was just made perfect by the bear bending over behind you and Cracked a Bear putting in an appearance for us.
You would want that, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
But these people didn't see the Cracked a Bear, but what they did see, they'd seen a 17th century mansion appear and then disappear.
What?
Apparently. Yeah, wow. I know. It's great. He's off to investigate this. It's apparently made the news many times in Bury St Edmunds, so I'll be looking forward to seeing that film. So there's a multitude of talents here at Guerilla Cricket.
Certainly are. Okay. Well, that's about it. If you like this, please like and subscribe below. Leave your comments either here or on Twitter at Guerilla Cricket. If you would like to support us, though, we would love you to go to patreon.com/Guerilla Cricket and become a patron from as little as $2 right through to there's a $10 tier, which gives you all sorts of goodies, which we've spoken about often. And if you would like some really good Ricky Ponting wine at a 15% discount, there's a link below you can use. Use the code GCAshes2023 and you will get a 15% discount on all of his wines. So that's it for tonight. We'll be with you tomorrow night. Anything you want to sign off with, Hendo?
Well, I just think it's good to talk about Ricky Ponting's wine the day after he got hit by a grape.
Yeah, pelted by a grape. I love it.
Indeed.
Okay, well, thank you all very much, and we'll see you tomorrow. Good night.
Cheers, Nessie. Good night. Ta-da.
And now it's time for Guerilla Roundup. They'll let you know what happened.